After the gig finished, we all enjoyed a drink at the bar, except Bernie, who was nowhere to be seen. I returned to the cabin later that night, only to find a sock on the outside doorknob and a do not disturb sign. This was curious indeed. I was about to enter when I heard some talking from inside the cabin. I hid behind a pillar as Bernie opened the door. Out he came, pushing the wheelchair with the lady from the gig in. I could not believe it. Bernie had clearly got up to some naughty business with an old age pensioner. He wheeled her down the corridor and out of sight, on the lookout for any witnesses. After he was gone, I entered the room that we shared and was overcome by a horrible fishy waft, which I'm pretty sure wasn't coming from the sea. I sucked it up and went straight to my bed. As I lay there, I looked over at Bernie's used bed and was horrified to see a set of false teeth on his bedside table. I dry retched a few times, then went to sleep, although I did briefly wake up as I heard Bernie sneak in on his return. I pretended to be asleep. I awoke the next morning to my worst fears. I felt my panties, as I do every morning, and, unfortunately, they were dripping wet. I knew this would happen at sea. The bobbing up and down of the boat in the mass of water must have triggered the desire to wet myself again. It's such a shame because I was making real, genuine progress. It had been at least 3 weeks since my last accident. I looked over at Bernie, who was still fast asleep, took a shower and made myself beautiful. As I came out of the bathroom, Bernie was sitting upright on his bed, holding the set of false teeth. He gingerly smiled at me and creepily declared, "Best gum job I've ever had. It'll be hard to have one with the teeth in again." No more words were spoken between us until breakfast, where he bragged to Gino, Cindy and Radhika about his conquest. The others seemed to be as repulsed as me, apart from Gino, who was clearly physically shaking as Bernie went into detail about his gum job. The gig that night went really well, with Cindy and Radhika playing their fannies off. Unfortunately, to my horror, Bernie seemed distracted again, and he was clearly making eyes at the same old-age pensioner who was in the front row. The crowd of old-age pensioners went as mental as a crowd of old-age pensioners possibly could. We all enjoyed a beer at the bar after, but like the night before, Bernie was nowhere to be seen. We all guessed what he was up to. I returned to the cabin, a little bit tipsy a few hours later. I opened the door to find Bernie in tears on his knees. On the bed lay a naked old-age pensioner who was clearly dead. "What happened?" I blared at Bernie. "She had a bloody heart attack during the lovemaking. She's got no pulse," he agonizingly screamed. What a palaver this evening was turning out to be. We needed to act fast. Bernie and I wrapped her up in the bed sheets, put her in the wheelchair, and discreetly took her body up to the top deck of the ship. We tossed her lifeless corpse into the deep ocean and watched as it aimlessly floated near the boat. I thought it would sink. We should probably have tied some weight to it, to be honest, but it was too late for that now. My idea of leaving the wheelchair near the edge was a genius idea, as it made it appear that she had simply fallen into the water. The years of watching Murder, She Wrote had not been in vain. We returned back to our cabins and got into our beds and stared at the ceiling. To make us feel better, we talked ourselves into reasons why what we had just done was actually not too bad. I mean, she had clearly lived a long life and she had died enjoying herself. And Bernie didn't even know her name. The guilt started to ease and we both fell into a blissful sleep. The next morning, we were awoken by the security alarms going off on the ship. Everyone was being summoned to the top deck. The ship captain addressed us all to say that the cruise was cancelled and we would all be flown home. The reason being that a passenger's body was found floating in the sea near the boat that morning. I knew I should have put a weight on her. The captain explained that it appears she had fallen into the sea whilst going for a moonlight stroll. Bernie and I looked at each other nervously. Along with all of the other passengers, we were escorted onto land and taken to Bergen Airport, which was the nearest airport to us. If I'd learnt one thing doing this last gig, it's that life on the open waves is not for Louis Horn. No siree.
The dolphins are dying, Greta Thunberg is crying, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world.
comes from their arse, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world.